Hi, welcome to another episode of Biz Jet TV. My name is Fabrizio Poli, and today we're going to be talking about business aviation in Asia, and we'll be going over to Hong Kong and talking to Sarah Kalmeta, who's the head of the Discovery Program over at the Asian Business Aviation Association. And Sarah will be enlightening us on the market out there, what the reaction has been as a result of COVID-19, where she thinks the market is going, and the different areas and the different areas of growth in business aviation, and a few other insights. So let's go straight into today's episode about business aviation in Asia. Off we go. Okay, Sarah, welcome to Biz Jet TV. Nice to have you here from all the way from Hong Kong. Lots happening in the world of business aviation these days, and in the world in general. This lockdown has surprisingly hit everybody. Nobody expected this to happen. But some interesting figures have come out because Knight Frank just published their recent wealth report, telling us all about the ultra high net worth individuals, these people worth more than $30 million, saying that market is going to grow by 27% over the next 5 years. And most of that growth is coming out of the region where you are, which is Asia. They reckon 44%. So 138,000 more ultra high net worth individuals are going to be coming into the market in the next 5 years. 44% of those coming out of Asia, which equates to about 60,000 people. Now, that's an interesting number. So what do you think about, these new people coming into the private jet market? Do you think, the whole COVID-19 lockdown is encouraging more people? I mean, what's the reaction been in Asia? And what do you think is going to happen with these 60,000 plus people?
Well, thank you. These are great questions. Thank you for having me today. I think that, we have seen the trend. Obviously, China had explosive growth in the last 10 years, but that's tapered off. And so prior to the pandemic, become a global situation, we were seeing quite a lot of activity starting in Southeast Asia. So that's been where the kind of next growth spurt is happening. And even though we've had this speed bump, as I'll call it, this year, we are starting to see more activity. Now, of course, we live in an environment over here where we have many little countries that are all governed by different governments. The airspace is controlled by different militaries. So that's what makes the growth really hard, is because we have infrastructure restrictions and constraints. And also the cities have explosively grown, so there's not so much room to develop. But as you say, there are more people that are coming into this space. And while typically some of these individuals or corporations, they've been flying, business class, first class, perhaps booking out the entire cabin for their executive team. Now with the health concerns and the inability to travel so freely on airlines, I definitely think we're going to see a trend. Certainly we've seen the request for charter increase exponentially in the last couple of months over here.
Yeah, so which countries do you see emerging in Asia as private jet users? I mean, besides China, which everybody tends to talk about, which is kind of the obvious one, and then you've got Japan, which is kind of there as well and always been there. What other countries do you see, coming into the private jet space?
I mean, obviously, Singapore is a big contender. They have Seletar Airport, which is completely a business aviation hub. Only recently did Firefly start some propeller operations. And of course, that's been impacted recently. But they have a business aviation center. You've got companies like Bombardier, Jet Aviation, and these major OEMs and facilities at that airport. So that's really been a hub. But we're also now seeing growth in Malaysia, Indonesia, places like Vietnam. And, that's not as big as the China gold rush, but it is certainly growing.
Yeah, I know a BBJ was sold recently into Vietnam, so that's an interesting addition to their fleet. So what aircraft do you think are going to become popular? We've seen a lot of the big aircraft being sold and new aircraft being sold into Asia. Is that trend changing? Are they looking at smaller aircraft now? I mean, what do you see?
We still see the interest in the bigger jets and the long-range aircraft, but now rather than the newer aircraft, they are looking at pre-owned. I think a lot of that has to do with the current climate in the market. I was just talking with Asian Sky Group and the board members of ASBA this morning, and a lot of transactions are now exiting China. There's a lot on sale coming out of China.
Yeah.
So the Southeast Asian market is looking at pre-owned, a higher percentage than the new aircraft. That's not to say that they're not looking at the new models, but it's typically those long-range aircraft and pre-owned.
So what challenges do you think the Asian private jet market is going to face?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is the high fixed cost that owners have to maintain for the aircraft, even though they're not flying. So, especially right now, they're feeling the pain where they're paying aircraft management fees, they're paying the maintenance upkeep, they're paying pilot salaries, and yet they're not actually able to use this tool that they purchased, and who knows when they might be able to use it again.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, I think that one of the biggest constraints really in this part of the world is infrastructure. At Corporate Jet Investor Asia in 2017, we were shown a graph that IATA had put out, or a table, excuse me, highlighting the different airports in the Asia Pacific region. And by 2020, 80% of those airports were already at max capacity, and by 2024 at max runway capacity. So you can see we have a constraint with the growth that's happening in this region. They are developing new airports, like for example, Beijing has the new airport in the south now that recently opened, although they're on lockdown at the minute. And the problem is with some of these countries, they're too small. There's not enough space to build another hub, or the hub is so far removed from the current business centers that it's not attractive for owners. So the other issue is that it can often take up to 72 hours to obtain a flight permit. Whereas if you're in the United States or Europe, it can be a matter of hours before you can take off. Here, it can be a matter of days. So some people might be better served by jumping on the airline in traditional times.
Yeah, of course, and of course that's changed. So with your role with the ASBAA, tell us a bit about the ASBAA and what you are doing to promote private aviation throughout Asia. Because it's always seen as very much as a luxury item in Asia, more than a business tool. So what are you doing to sort of change that mindset?
Okay, so the ASBA is the Asian Business Aviation Association, and we have membership partnerships with MBAA, the Japan Business Aviation Association, EBAA. So we're really representing the community here in Asia Pacific region. The three pillars are representation, advocacy, and community. So we represent more than one entity or one sector of the business. So our voice is much more powerful when we go and advocate and lobby with the government. And one of our greatest successes was in 2018 with the slots here in Hong Kong. We were able to get an increased number of slots in the nighttime period, which previous to our lobbying efforts, we had a restriction on certain aircraft because the system here at Hong Kong was designed without corporate aviation in mind. Mm-hmm. And so we had to be completely exempt from noise. Whereas in a lot of airports around the world, and the way the airlines work is they get a quota allowance per year. And as long as they stay under the quota, then they're allowed to operate. So there was a bit of disparity when you see the 747 taking off at 2 a.m., but yet the Boeing business jet was not allowed to take off. Mm-hmm. So through our lobbying efforts and work with the OEMs and all of our members, we were able to successfully get slots for those types of aircraft that are proven to be very quiet and have our own quota, if you will, for business aviation. So we were very happy with that. And we also provide a good networking community platform. So we host CEO luncheons where we bring in speakers from within the industry. We tried to get government involvement in those activities. And then one of our biggest CSR projects is called ASBA Discovery, which I'm the head of. And this is our student youth and outreach program where we aim to bridge the gap between the next generation of talent and industry. And as you mentioned before, there will be a gap. Maybe aviation right now is not the most attractive career choice for some people, or perhaps they're very passionate about aviation, but they're not sure how can they get into it. The typical misconception, as you say, is people think of it as the rich person's toy, and it's a luxury item similar to a yacht, perhaps, and that it's not really necessary. So what we aim to do with Discovery is we help students, we rebranded as Discovery in 2017 to help students discover their passion for aviation. Mm-hmm. And we go into schools all the way from very young age, secondary school age to postgraduate.
So these schools, are they just in Hong Kong or all over Asia?
All over Asia. So we started in Hong Kong primarily, and we then expanded. We have mainland China, Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore with very active chapters. And the team has now grown to around 12 people around those regions.
Mm.
And we have educational partnerships with certain institutions, which means we have a regular presence. We're going into their classroom every semester. Every new group of students that's coming in, we get to touch and highlight the different opportunities that they have within our sector. And then we also do one-offs, so based on networking or perhaps what events are happening in each country, then we can go and do a workshop for that group of students. And when we go to the high school level, that's when we're really trying to help the students pivot and choose a career in aviation, so that as they make their university choices, they can study something that would be relevant for their choice here. But one of the biggest things we talk about is, of course, you go into a classroom, and here in Asia in particular, you ask anyone off the street, what kind of career could you have in aviation? And the typical answer you get is pilot or flight attendant. You're lucky if you get engineer. You're lucky if you even get an airport worker, right? And there's how many jobs are at the airport? We know thousands of them, right?
Cool.
So we go in and we have a presentation, we have infographics, we have some videos, and we highlight the different careers that people can have that you don't need the technical expertise of being a pilot or an engineer for.
Mm-hmm.
So, we still need in aviation, and especially in corporate aviation marketing, we need business development, sales, lawyers, financiers, all the activities you need in any business line, any industry, we also need in this one. Mm-hmm. So you might have a burning passion for aviation, but you have an accounting degree. That's fine. We still need accountants. So, we just try to open the doors for people. We have a mentorship program through the student membership of ASBA Discovery. Mm-hmm. And we also have several consulting projects and internship opportunities that we do throughout the year with various institutions.
So what response are you getting from the students when you go in and you show them all these other options in aviation besides piloting or being a flight attendant?
Often there's a lot of excitement, and that's really why I'm excited and why I love this program, because we're really opening the door in the minds, and really at the end of the day, it's about your mindset. And so while aviation right now might be experiencing a downturn, everything is cyclical, and we will see a resurgence. At the end of the day, planes are still flying. We're bringing cargo around. There's still medical and humanitarian flights. Mm-hmm. And, flying is here to stay. It may be different. Yes, of course, it will transform. But if we look at, the past, how industries have transformed, the ones that are the most flexible are the ones that are sustainable. And aviation will be how, as a global economy, things move around in the world. So we get a lot of excitement when people realize that they don't need to have studied aviation, but they can work in this environment. And one of my favorite things to do is bring the students on a field trip to one of the hangars, because, of course, being around the airplanes is exciting in of itself. I still get excited every time I'm in a hangar.
Yeah. Now, what about urban air mobility? Because that's quite, it's talked about a lot in Asia. Singapore is one of those cities. Guangzhou is another one, which is going to be part of these 70 cities around the world launching urban air mobility, which is going to be another branch of business aviation. What kind of talk is going on around that? And are the students asking about that? Are you explaining that to the students? I mean, what's going on? Tell us more about that part of business aviation there in Asia.
Yeah, so definitely, as you mentioned, in Singapore, they've already started testing with some of their urban air mobility vehicles around the Marina Bay Sands area, and Airbus is based there, and they're really part of that program. And so I would say there's more awareness in Singapore than there is here in Hong Kong or some of the other countries. Now, we do have obviously helicopter use here as well as around the Asia Pacific region, but due to the more bureaucratic process with regards to how many different bureaus are involved, we're still seeing a bit of a slow shift in that direction, but Singapore is certainly pioneering it. And so with Embry-Riddle Asia, based in Singapore, we have a lot of students focusing on this area, and there's a lot more projects with Changi Airport Group that are now specifically focusing on urban air mobility.
Yeah. Okay. So do you see, people opening up more to the fact that the business jet is a business tool than a luxury item over in Asia?
I do think that there's been a shift. Of course, it depends if we get a writer with a major news publication that is not particular for business aviation, and then when they put out an article that puts us in this light of being just this VIP industry, that doesn't do us very good. But I think with the work that ASBA has been doing especially over the last 10 years, and in the last 5 years in particular, we've really had a lot of movement, and we've really started working with the governments to be part of the planning, part of the solution, rather than fixing it after something's been implemented. And through the work through ASBA Discovery, and now we're reaching young students, people whose minds are a bit more flexible and open. They then go home, they can tell their parents, they can tell their friends. And I mean, even just the Discovery program in and of itself has grown exponentially in the last 3 years. And we are seeing a shift in the types of questions that students are asking. So I definitely think that the mindset is opening up to that. And as aviation in general has opened up in the region, then that's, they're able to understand the benefit of being able to take an aircraft to a location closer to the factory, and then being able to go back. And so that's something we really highlight when we go into the schools, is how is this a business tool? Yes, there's more restrictions in Asia. Yes, it's not as utilized as a business tool as it's meant to be, but that's due to infrastructure and regulatory constraints. But when you have the infographic of how much time can be saved on either end, that's really when it's the most powerful to the students.
Yeah, and I think this whole lockdown thing, pandemic, blah blah blah, they will be introducing a lot more, let's say, checks in airports. So it's going to take longer to get through, to get onto.
Exactly.
And I think that's going to create a lot of disruption. Yeah, and people are going to think, And I think one of the things which may become popular is like corporate shuttles, like the Challenger 850. You can quick that with 16 seats. So if you've got a company, you're moving people back and forth between Singapore and I don't know, Tokyo or whatever it may be, those kind of airplanes will probably be of a good use, because you control the airplane, you control who goes on the airplane, and all that kind of thing. But of course, I think education is key in letting people see that this is a business tool more than a luxury item, and that with the press and social media and What about social media? Is social media being used in private aviation in Asia, or is that something not really?
Yes, definitely. In China, they're using WeChat. Here in Hong Kong, through ASBA and ASBA Discovery, we have LinkedIn, we have a Facebook page, Instagram. We've started Discovery Digital, which is on YouTube. We've just launched that. So short little clips between 1 and 5 minutes in length, giving advice to students about how to interview, how to prepare a CV, what skills to focus on, that type of thing. So it's certainly being utilized more. And, you're even seeing in some cases platforms for booking or for requesting charter quotes. So that's definitely something. Of course, with every generation, there's a new technology, a new platform, and that is something that's being utilized. And I think that's also helping with some of the shifts in perception. But it really just is going to take time, and, the people who are passionate. One of the things I like to highlight for students is the talent shortage. Not only is there going to be a shortage of pilots over the next 20 years, but Asia Pacific is going to lead the worldwide growth for a requirement of around 250,000 pilots in the next 20 years. And so, as we see, some people might look at aviation and say, oh, that's, struggling. I don't know if I want to do that anymore. But on the other side, there's a lot of opportunity here, because there will be less people perhaps focusing on this environment. But outside of pilots, we still need the maintenance technicians. And as airplanes become more and more advanced, it becomes more of a almost like an IT or a computer software engineer. And so there's going to be a lot of different dynamic skills that are required in our industry, which is interesting across the board for many people.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah, thank you very much for your time. And we wish you luck with everything. And thank you for being on Biz Jet TV. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So as you can see, there is going to be an increased demand for private jet travel. So the question is, are you going to be flying private? Is your company going to be flying private? You're going to give your team the edge by flying by private jet. I encourage you to have a look at this next video, 5 reasons to fly private jet. Click on that. You can also click on the playlist here of the different private jets. If you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Give us a thumbs up and comment below and let us know what you think about the developments of private aviation, maybe in your region in the world, and any suggestions for any future videos. And that's all from Fabrizio Poli on Biz Jet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.